Hi everyone, I hope you're having a good week. You know, it's the height of summer at the moment, and I'd like to share one of my favorite desserts of the season, summer pudding. This version of summer pudding uses frozen mixed berries. You know, I'm a big fan of frozen fruit. It often provides excellent quality at a much cheaper price than fresh, even at the height of the growing season. And since frozen berries are available the year round, you could enjoy a slice of summer pudding in the middle of February. All in all, summer pudding is a perfect Larder Living recipe. I really hope you enjoy it. Our ingredients for summer pudding couldn't be simpler. We've got frozen berries and some sugar, and oh yes, some white bread, which is sitting out getting a bit stale. Stale works better than fresh bread because it's really good at soaking up the juices of the berries. But if you don't have stale, just leave some out for a little while or use fresh, it'll be fine. For today's summer pudding, this is an optional ingredient, but I picked up some elderflower cordial, which for me also has this kind of perfume of summer about it. I just love it. So I'm gonna add a little bit into the cooling berry mixture, but it is optional. You don't have to use it. And just a note on prices, I found two kinds of frozen summer fruit or frozen berries at Tesco's. One is their summer fruit mix. This is 500 grams, and it goes for £4 the kilo, so this is 2 pounds. And then this is kind of ugly fruit. It's frozen, what's it called? Perfectly imperfect mixed berries. And it's pretty much like the other fruit mixture, except actually it has strawberries in it. And they're all kinds of sizes and shapes. So Tesco's perfectly imperfect mixed berries come in at $2.49 the kilo. That's almost half the price of their other offer on frozen mixed berries. Both are fine. Both are a really good savings compared to fresh fruit. And just as a point of comparison, right now, strawberries, which are in season, of course, are £5 the kilo. Fresh blueberries are £12 the kilo. And fresh raspberries are £13.34 the kilo. So it's just amazing that the savings between the two. And you know, frozen fruit is typically picked in the orchard at its greatest ripeness, soon frozen pretty close thereafter. So you're really getting peak quality of the fruit. It's just coming to you frozen. And you know, for summer pudding, it doesn't matter. It's great with frozen berries. Let's prepare the summer pudding. We're going to do this in basically 2 steps. The first step is to mix the fruit and the sugar together, put it onto the heat, let it come to a simmer, and let it simmer and bubble for about 2 to 3 minutes. Then we'll remove it from the heat and let it cool a little bit. And the second step will be to line the bowl for the summer pudding with the white bread. Let's get the fruit on the fire. Right, so for this recipe, I'm going to use the 500 grams of frozen mixed berries from Tesco's. This I bought frozen and has now thawed pretty much. It's sort of semi-frozen, which will be just fine. These bags are really great. They're Ziploc bags, and I rinse them out and use them again and again and again and again. They're really practical, and I encourage you to do the same thing. Right, so into the pot. And then we're going to add the sugar. This recipe calls for about 120 grams of sugar to the 500 grams of fruit. 120 grams is about 2/3 of a cup. You don't have to be super precise about the sugar. The best thing to do is to taste it and see if it's sweet enough, then you can add a bit less, or if it's particularly tart, the berries, then add a bit more. Okay, just give those a good stir. Right, so I'm going to add just a couple of tablespoons of water just to extend the juices a little bit. And I'm going to add the same amount of elderflower cordial, which is completely optional. You don't have to use it in the recipe. If you have it and you want to, that's great. But you don't have to use it. Just leave it out. Okay, let's get this on the fire. I'm going to cook this at a kind of medium-low heat just until it simmers, and then I'll raise the heat and let it go at a full simmer for about 2 to 3 minutes, and that should be just fine. So while the fruit is cooling, we're going to line the bowl with bread. This is a 1 liter volume bowl. And if you're not sure what the size of the bowl is, just fill a measuring cup with some water, see what the amount is, pour it into the bowl, and you can measure the volume that way. Before lining it with bread, you can just add a little dash of oil to the bowl and spread it around with some kitchen paper. And then you're ready for the cling film. The oil makes the cling film not so clingy and a little bit easier to manage, you'll see. So good idea to be fairly generous with the cling film because we want some excess to cover the summer pudding when the bowl is full. Great, then we're going to rotate the bowl about 90 degrees and add a second piece of generously sized cling film to line the bowl. And just work this in bit by bit until the inside is covered well with the plastic. You don't have to do this, but it makes unmolding a lot smoother process. Okay, done. The next step is to trim the crusts off the bread and make one circular shape for the bottom of the bowl, and then the rest of the slices will be cut in half to create rectangles. So you can use scissors to trim the crusts off the bread, or you can do it pretty much in one fell swoop with a bread knife. Done. For the leftover bread crusts that you have, you could pop them into a bag and freeze them. You could make breadcrumbs, fresh breadcrumbs, and then freeze them. You could also make French toast, so you end up with a kind of cubist version of French toast. Why not? So we need a circular piece of bread for the bottom of the bowl, and for this one, I'm going to use scissors because it's just a bit easier, and just trimming the corners off the bread. Something more or less like that. And then that fits pretty nicely in the bottom of the bowl. And for the remaining bread, we're just going to cut this in half once to end up with a bunch of rectangles. Right, and I almost forgot. Now that the berries have cooled down a little bit, here's a nice trick. We're going to dip one side of the bread pieces into the juice and then line the bowl. And when we go to unmold it, it kind of ensures that the berry juice makes it to its final destination, and that's to say on the outside of the bread. You'll see. And then for the rectangles, we're going to line those up on the side of the bowl, overlapping slightly. So you don't want any bit of clear space between the bread that would peek to the outside of the bowl. And I'm overlapping the rectangles as well onto the round piece and then just pressing to kind of create a seam. And feel free to trim the bread down a little bit as you get towards the end to get a good custom fit. Right, that looks pretty good. Now that the bowl is lined, we can add the remaining berries and juice and cover it with a layer of bread, and we're pretty much done. Just before putting the top on, we'll give it a bit of a haircut and just trim the bits of bread hanging over the top to the edge of the bowl. Good, and now we can add the remaining slices of bread, the rectangles, onto the top. These we don't have to dip, of course, because they're going to be on the bottom. No one's going to see them. And you can trim the bread into smaller pieces to get a good fit. And finally, we're going to put a small saucer that fits just inside of the bowl to press down the bread into the fruit and the fruit into the bread that's lining the bowl. And you'll want a weight to place on top. So anything that's handy and heavy you can use, can of beans, a bag of rice, and I think I'll go with the rice. It's ready to go into the fridge for at least 8 hours. It's getting late now, so I'm putting this in to bed for the night. Right, so our summer pudding has had a good rest overnight in the refrigerator, and it's time to unmold it. So let's go. So off with the saucer, just peeling back the cling film, and I'm just going to loosen the sides a little bit with a spatula just to make the unmolding a little bit easier. And then take the serving plate, turn it over. Let gravity do its thing. You can tug a little bit on the cling film. Great, and that's looking pretty good. You can see the coloring of the bread is nice and even because we dipped it in the berry juice when we were assembling it. Right, and for service, I am going to garnish this with a bit of frozen berries that I saved from earlier and thawed out and just spooned on the top. And maybe a sprig of mint. And I think we're ready to serve. So a fine British summer pudding. Enjoy.